Look at all that production.
Well, here today with star penciler Rags Morales, who's done notable work for many companies, including DC and Valiant. And in fact, Rags and I had the pleasure of working with one another on Turok at Valiant. But his work is notable because of his outstanding mastery of line, the excitement that he brings to his drawing. I remember collecting the Identity Crisis that you illustrated and being blown away with that. And one of the reasons I think is that Brad Metzger, who wrote it, is an accomplished novelist and brought a novelist's eye to story construction. And so the story seemed to be, I hate to say this, a lot better written than many comics of the era at that time. But, you know, Rags, you're such a professional that no matter how the comic is written, you're going to illustrate it to the best of your ability. But you must have been aware when you were illustrating that book that this was a step above the usual comic book fare.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny. I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody about this. There's been an influx, and it happened in the 2000s, and I think Dan DiDio really spearheaded this, where we had more novelists involved, playwrights, screenwriters, and things like that, and they bring a very different approach. The approach seems to be more less instructive and more intuitive. You know, it's when I describe my job to people who don't understand, I said, well, if you ever read a novel, you get that picture in your head, I draw the picture. It's that simple. And comic books has evolved in a way of being a communicative thing. And as egos became larger, and everybody has an ego, you know, a penciler has it, an inker has one, a writer, you know, has one.
Writers have no egos.
Oh no, not you. You were wonderful. But it's just, in order to communicate, sometimes you could talk too much about a thing. But with Brad, he had a very, his thing was that he had a very succinct thing that he wanted to do, and he wanted it to look like a CSI episode. And he had the directing all down. Now, normally, and we've had this conversation, like, normally it's, in my opinion, it's like, screw the writer, the artist is the director. Writer's the screenwriter, artist is the director. You know, and we do the camera angles and the lighting and things like that, because we are a servant to the story. You know, it's not that we have such an ego that we just like, you know, screw your story, it's going to be my way or the highway. It's like, no. The story is invoking things in me, and in order for me to do my job, I have to bring that out. And a lot of writers are so to the point of doing it that it's like, there's no thinking involved. And if there's no thinking involved, well, then there's no emotion involved. If there's no emotion involved, then you can't be an artist, because the idea of being an artist, whether you're a writer, a musician, a comic book artist, anybody who's artistic, is about communicating on some sort of either subliminal level or just a very obvious level of the human experience, right? Because it's all about the communication to the audience. If you don't get them to like their favorite song, or they like their favorite story, or like their favorite comic book, then you've done a poor job of communicating as an artist. You know, the whole point is to evoke emotion. And yeah. But with Brad, his work was so specific. At first, I didn't want to be that. You know, no. You know, I remember having a conversation with my then wife. Talking about, he wants to have this double page spread. He's like 22 pages or 22 pounds across double page spread. Was he nuts? I'm not going to do that. Nobody does more than 9 pounds a page. That's crazy. But then I kept reading the script. By the time I got done with the Sudimni and the satellite scene, okay, as Dr. Light approaches, I realize I'm sweating, I'm getting angry, I'm gripping the paper that I'm reading, and I'm realizing that he's really got me invested. I says, well, if he wants 22 pages, or 22 panels, he's going to get 22 panels. And that sold me on that. It's like, you know what? Now this dude knows exactly what he's doing. He did Archer's Quest before that, and I read that, and it was hey, that was a really good story, you know. But you know, again, he was an outsider coming in, you know. And even though Kevin Smith was just a director and a movie maker, he's also a comic fan, right? So for Brad to come in and tread on our territory, I was like, screw this guy, you know. But no, he sold me, you know.
Well, there's an important principle in storytelling, and it applies to novels as well as to any visual medium, and that's to show, don't tell. What that means is any information you can transmit to the viewer or the reader visually, you should. Yeah. And parcel your words out like a miser, especially dialogue. Use that dialogue for characterization so that you know what kind of person you're dealing with. Occasionally, some exposition. Sure, you're going to use dialogue for exposition, but try to keep it down and to show as much as possible. And one of the finest examples I know of that is Better Call Saul, that TV show, which would often begin with a 5-minute wordless tracking shot. And you don't know what's going on until the tracking shot comes to its end. Then you say, oh, I get it. Now I'm hooked.
The Cinnabon scene in the beginning, right? When he's being pulled along, and you got that I forgot the name of the band, but it's a song, My Shadow, Something Else in Me, you know?
Yeah.
Great soundtrack, man. They really picked some great music on that. I got a playlist of good stuff. But exactly. And in fact, they do that. You go to cinematography school, right? One of the things they do is they get you to do a movie with no words, you know. Same thing with narrative illustration. You go to the Joe Cuba school or any other school that does narrative or sequential art. It's you have to do the who, what, where, why, and how all in there. It's all got to be in there. And you should be able to do it without dialogue. And that's one of my favorite things to do is to do something. It's such a challenge, you know.
Well, you went to the Kubert School.
I'm sorry?
You went to the Kubert School.
You did too?
No.
I think he's saying that you went there.
I did. Yes. Yeah. And I taught there as well for about 2.5 years.
Cool.
Who were when you first went there? Who were your more notable instructors? Did you take class with Joe himself?
Joe, I never got past the second year, and he was a third year teacher. It's a 3-year school, he would substitute occasionally, and he was a great communicator of ideas. He can get to the point succinctly, and it would stick with you forever. So he was a great communicator that way. But probably I had, Erwin Hazen, Dondi. He created Wildcat and Catman.
Yeah.
And I had, High Iceman, who was also a lot of the original group. I had Jose Delbo. I was a big fan of his Billy the Kid series as a kid, in this Charlton Comics, and he taught me how to draw guns. I was learning how to draw guns, and he became my teacher. And in fact, he was my first out of art school. He was my first art job. I was a ghost artist over some of his work with Transformers and Thundercats. He was doing it for Marvel at the time.
In recent years, Jose had been struggling until he decided to release some art as non-fungible tokens. And I think he was one of the first, if not the first, comic book artists to do that.
Yeah. Did you get that email too?
Bam!
We're not supposed to do that. He's wow, yeah, he just he put something a Wonder Woman coin out, and it really banked for him, you know. So good. Hey, go. He's like 90 now, so
Yeah.
go Jose, go.
Wow.
But yeah, he gave me my first art. He was a great guy. So there was but probably the most influential one was somebody that no one really knows about. She didn't do anything in the industry, but he was a wonderful teacher. It was Ben Ruiz, and he studied at SVA under Baron Hogarth. So you would ask him a question, and he had this wonderful way of storytelling where he would just take you on this long trip all the way around, and then eventually get to the point of what you asked the question for. By the time it got to the point you asked the question for, that you were thoroughly entertained, you understood completely what it is you should have been asking, and then he'll just answer the question simply.
Yeah.
And then it made complete sense, So he had he was probably even my favorite instructor at the time. Yeah.
Did they require life drawing at the Kubert School?
And he was my life drawing teacher. So yeah, he was my anatomy teacher, and we had live models coming in, and and he didn't go to. I mean, when I taught. Kim DeMolder, I think it was the anatomy teacher, and he had the students learn every phalange, every sinew name, I mean, when I went there, it was major muscle groups. We didn't parcel out the different muscles in the pectoralis, but you understood it was the pectoralis, and it's actually kind of a good thing to have that kind of information, because if you go to a doctor and you can specify an area, they're not going to screw you.
Right.
If you sound like you know a little bit about anatomy,
Yeah. Yep.
It's kind of like, if you know anything about a car, you take it to a mechanic, they'll basically, they won't screw you with the price. Right. So,
yeah.
So yeah, it was a good thing to know, but they do teach, they have 10 courses. They have, anatomy, they have computer courses, Illustrator, Photoshop. They've got, and that's new. When I went, they didn't have that. They had layout. When I went, it was layout and design, lettering, anatomy, animation, basic drawing, methods and materials, narrative. There's like 10 courses in the course of a week, and you come home with like 8 hours of homework a day. So it's basically boot camp for comic books.
Do you have a drawing anatomy book you use?
Probably the one that I like the most is Artistic Anatomy by David Rubens. It's a Pelican Press. I think it's Pelican Press book. And the way he does it is that he starts out with a section of the anatomy. And he starts you, I don't have it handy, it's in my other area. He starts you off with like the bones, like the rib cage, and he'll do the first layer of muscles over that. He'll do like the abdominals and the obliques, and then he'll add the serratus to that, and then he'll put in the latissimus dorsi from the front, and how it connects to the humerus bone, and where it attaches around where the deltoid is and everything, and then he'll layer. The next layer would be the pectoralis. So as you're turning the page, you're getting from the bones out, and so you get a very thorough understanding of what it is you're drawing. And then he'll separate, and then he'll do the leg, and then the arms, and the face, and the head, and at the very end, he'll show you what it all looks like with skin on it. So
did you ever look at
any
of Bern Hogarth's drawing anatomy books?
I've got oh yeah, no, it's all of them. Look, it's when you do this. Joe used to have this thing where he used to say that every book is a Bible to us, and I used to tell my students, while you still can, I understand we have the internet and everything, but while you still can do it, before they close them all down, go to a Barnes and Noble, go to a Books A Million or something like that, and go to the area where they have discount books. Chances are there's a lot of great picture books. So get your landscape books, get your car anatomy books, get your books on dinosaurs and then World War II airplanes and things like that. get them because they're going to be more instructional and they'll be really cheap. They're like $5-10, you know. And
It's
so that's how you
true.
build up your library. So for sure, yeah.
You know, the used bookstores out here are thriving.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I think they will for a long time because a lot of people, myself included, we prefer physical media.
Yeah, there's something really cool about smelling a book. Yeah.
Get high off old book smell.
Oh yeah. I used to, when I was living in New Jersey, I had we had a used book seller, and I went there with like 4 milk carton crates, and I walked with them, carried them back to my house because it was a few blocks where it was, and it was very heavy. But I got like all kinds of great books on antiques, a lot of National Geographic books and things like that. So yeah, hey, if you're going to do this for a living, you have to know what the hell it is you're drawing, because you're going to get someone who's going to refer to things, and you're going to have to look it up and find it. And not every artist has a good writer who's going to be willing enough to actually send you material. Sometimes they do. When I worked with Jeff Johns, he actually sent me books that he was referencing, so that we were on the same page. And that was for Hawkman. You know, he sent me a lot of weapons books and things like that. So and one on a Hindu temple, because at one particular storyline we went to India, so like getting all that, you know, that visual stuff. So it was really cool. It was really cool. That's one of the favorite parts too about this industry too, is they actually continue to learn. You know?
Yeah.
And that's always nice.
Everybody I know has more books than they can possibly read.
Oh
Yeah.
yes. I got books in my room. I got books in my living room. I got books in my studio. I got books in the other part of my studio. Yeah, I got them all over the place.
Do you read fiction?
You know, the last time I read fiction that I was like really enthralled was Judd Cole in a book called Cheyenne. It was a series. It's Pulp Fiction, about a half-breed Native American who was living amongst the Cheyenne. But beyond that, when I read, I'm not a huge fan of fiction, because I draw it all the time.
You do it, yeah.
I like biographies.
Me too.
I like autobiographies. I like. You're gonna love this. I got a book that I have yet to crack. It's called Trump on a Couch, by Dr. Justin Frank, who's I think he teaches at I forgot what university it is, but he teaches psychology, and he's also got a book on Obama too. So that's for you.
Yeah. do you so what about like movies and TV? Do you prefer like documentaries for that stuff too, or do you like?
Oh yeah, I'm a big documentary fool. I love them.
Me too.
I got Netflix on.
Me too.
And I'm constantly going through it. I'll do the binge thing, like, you know, Better Call Saul and
Right.
the Breaking Bad stuff I did.
There's a documentary on Miles Davis on Netflix called Birth of the Cool.
Oh, cool.
Which I recommend.
All right.
Because
check it out.
I love those jazz documentaries. There's another one called I Called Him Morgan, which is about the trumpet player Lee Morgan.
Oh, cool.
Who died young because his common law wife saw him with another woman and shot him. And the movie is told from her point of view. And in fact, she appears in the movie talking about it. But there's also a whole bunch of background about the jazz milieu at the time. It was in the 60s, you know, and he was part of that Blue Note group of young Turks that completely upset jazz.
Yeah, that's cool. Cool. There's this The Wrecking Crew. You ever see that documentary? It's
no,
really good.
I know, because that's on my list.
Yeah.
It's on my list.
Well, then I won't say anything more about it, but it's really good.
There's another one called Standing in the Shadows of Motown, which is about the session players that played on all those great hits. So that's another terrific documentary.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff, but when it comes to the movies, the only time I really come out for the movies anymore is because my girlfriend likes the Marvel movies.
Right.
And we saw Dune recently, but we have yet to go out and see the new Spider-Man movie.
What'd you think of Dune?
It's nice for a first for the first,
Yeah.
part. It's all set up. So it's just like, it's just okay. All right. There's a heart going in and, blah, blah, blah. So it's been so long since I saw the first one. It was kind of like hard to get, to get back into it and see how different it was. And after a while, it started coming back to me.
There are actually
I thought
two
visually it was
previous Dune
wonderful.
movies.
I'm sorry?
There are two previous Dune movies. There's
with John Rhys Davies and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this one was it was thick, for a first one, and I was like, okay, now it took you about half the movie finally get back into the groove of what's happening, and then but I thought visually it was magnificent. It was really well done.
It was great for people like my daughter, who kind of has grown, and my son too, have grown up as big Star Wars fans, and they're kind of like looking for a new, epic or something to be on.
Right
so for them it's like, oh yeah, this is great. And I was wondering, because I knew it was going to be long, and they're like, yeah, man, just give me as much as you can. And now they're talking about, I'm trying to remember if it's Prime or if it's HBO, probably HBO. That's supposed to be doing a TV show on the sisterhood. From that.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't know when it comes out, but it's it's going to be on the history of the sisterhood that the mom belonged to and everything.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
So
cool. I'll have to check it out.
Ann and I went out to see our first movie in years the other day. We saw House of Gucci with Lady Gaga.
How was it?
It was very good. It's a Ridley Scott film. It was just fascinating and totally entertaining.
I'll have to check it out. Put it on my list.
He doesn't make too many bad films or shows or whatever.
Couple.
Yeah.
Couple.
Prometheus.
Yeah.
I didn't see that one. Was that bad?
It's not bad, but compared to Alien, it's pale tea indeed.
Yeah. 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 So who are your big influences, like when you were growing up, as far as art style or even at the Kubert School?
Yeah, well, P. Craig Russell has a book out where he has a character laying in bed trying to get to sleep, and he tried to list all his favorite artists.
Yeah,
there's like this very small body at the bottom. It's like this long list of just like layer all these artists. It's like that, There's not one person. It's like everybody brings something to the table. I often describe myself and my style as if Neil Adams, Frank Frazetta, and Michael Golden had a gangbang, I'd be the baby. That's how I describe myself, my style. It's funny because when I was a kid, I was also a Boy Scout as a kid, and yeah, you're talking to a tenderfoot. And
I was gonna say, so you can't lie, right?
Well,
a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, clean, and reverent.
Wow, you got some of them. A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent.
That's right, Rags. Very good.
Well, hold on. Yeah. In fact, I've still got the Boy Scout handbook because one day when the zombie apocalypse comes and we have no electricity, I got to run out to the woods and find out what berries I can eat and stay away from poison.
That'll keep you alive.
Yeah.
So as a Boy Scout, I used to get Boys Life magazine and Norman Rockwell.
Right.
Had all these wonderful, beautiful covers. And long before AT&T, there was Ma Bell, and you would get the phone book, and occasionally you get a Norman Rockwell painting on it. So Rockwell was huge influence to me as a kid. And for a while, I thought I'd be an illustrator. Someday I just got to learn to paint, and I would do comic books for fun. But if I was going to be a serious artist, I'd be an illustrator, which probably explains my style, which is less comic book oriented and more illustrative oriented.
Yeah.
And so in pursuing artists in that vein, my very first favorite artist in comic books was Neil Adams. Um,
Yeah, when you see him for the first time, at least I had this reaction, which was, holy shit, not only is it exciting, but these look like real people.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And that was exactly that was the turn on for me. I was like, wow, this is a level up from what
Yeah.
because I used to collect the treasury editions, and most of the stuff I got in the '70s was stuff that was like in reprint. So I got a lot of things that were like Dick Sprang, you know, or Kurt Swan or something like that. Stuff that was like 10, 20 years already, past the time it came out. So when I
Right.
saw Neil, I was like, whoa, that was crazy. And then I started getting deeper into it, and people like Garcia Lopez became important to me because, again, realistic. And then you had the hybrid talents of John Buscema, you know, and he was, the comic book excitement with an illustrator's, foundation. So that's how I basically started getting into it, and then it took many many years for me to figure out what it was about Frazetta and Rockwell, and Michael Golden, who became a huge influence to me in the '80s.
Yeah.
What was the common thread is that there was a sense of caricature with the characters, but with realistic lighting,
Right.
and that was like, well, there you go, So that was the balance I always tried to strive. Um, Still working on it.
Are you doing any interiors these days?
I just got done doing 6 pages of Hercules. It's just a small bit. And my girlfriend's actually the colorist on it. And she's working on it now. It's not due until February. But
Is
I
that
did.
for Marvel?
No, Source Point Press.
Ah.
It's a smaller, I think they're a Canadian company. I was approached by George McHale. I ran into him in a convention, and we were having dinner, and I like hanging out with because Jeremy Clark was part of the group, and he's an inker, and I like hanging out with him because he's easy to make laugh. So I'm constantly
Yeah.
cutting up and making stupid jokes, and he's just constantly cracking up. So he was part of the group, and of course, when I get drinking, I'm very gregarious. And so I was just being the life of the party, and I got to meet George, and then one day he just emailed me and said, "Hey, dude, check this out." And the first thing I liked about it was that he was playing up the whole bisexual aspect of Hercules, you know, and it was just one scene where he just kind of like he had Newt. Remember Newt from the cartoon,
Oh.
Hercules cartoon? You remember
Yeah.
back?
Yeah. Yeah.
Come on, Mike.
Way back when.
Come on, Mike. You
Well,
remember?
Steve Rude would remember.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, one of the characters Newt was a centaur, and we just upgraded him. So now he's got a beard, he's got long hair, he's buff. Um, and so they kill the Hydra, and Hercules, grabs Newt by the hair and gives him a big old kiss, and then goes to a whorehouse. So it was like from one scene to the next. So I kind of I dug the whole let's take something. It's in order to do this kind of work, you have to do something familiar and new at the same time. So
Yeah.
if you're handling a character that's been done before, you have to have enough of those touchstones that make that character who that character is while you try to
Yeah.
flip it, and that's what I got. I got this whole new thing, and again, because I consider myself more an illustrator than a comic book artist, doing things like swords and sandals kind of stuff
Yeah.
is more natural to me, I guess, than doing superhero stuff.
Is that book going to be in a comic book store?
I'm sorry.
The Hercules story, is that going to be available in a comic book store?
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a compilation. This is a bunch of stories involved. I think it's called the Cover of Darkness anthology. So there's gonna be that. Recently though, and this has been going on for so long. Jim Starlin has an anthology that he wanted to put me on. It was weird because Facebook has everybody's birthdays, right? So I'm flipping through Facebook and look, there's Jim Starlin's birthday. Let me send him a text and wish him a happy birthday. And he asked me if I was under contract. I said, no. He said, well, I got a project. You want to work on it? And at the time, he had sliced the muscle between his fingers here in the meat of his hand. So we couldn't draw for more than 15 minutes. So we needed artists. And so I was going to do a Dreadstar story for him that turned into another story because all of a sudden he realized that his hand could draw again. So he gave me something else instead, which is probably better suited for me anyway. And at the time, he was associated with Ominous Press, but they're no longer around. Yeah. And that project was, on the checklist of projects to get to. They weren't quite getting to it yet because, he had some other stuff going on in his other projects. But I had done the treatment for it. I did the first 7 pages, for the promotion for Kickstarter. And all ready to go. But then COVID hit. And things were going on with the company where the financier was someplace else. And anyway, eventually the company just kind of went down. So here we had this product, we had no publisher, we were looking around for it. And I just got a call from him, and I haven't signed any contracts yet. But we're kind of hoping that this one's going to be good. But we're thinking maybe Dark Horse may be able to pick it up for us. Which would be really cool because that'll be the first thing I've done since I did Amory Wars for Coheed and Cambria is a progressive metal band, and the Claudio Sanchez is the lead singer and guitarist of Coheed and Cambria, and big comic book fan. So his stories, his music is an epic tale, and the comic books he puts out are based on the albums. So I did the 4th album called Good Apollo on Burning Star 4. And I did 12 issues of that. And that was, I think the last issue came out like 5 years ago, something like that. So, now that publishers have gone corporate and they want to go with cheaper talent overseas, all of us American guys are just kind of like hanging out saying, hey, I'm over here. Wait, hold on. I'm over here.
Well, you're all on Kickstarter and Indiegogo.
Yeah. So exactly. So we're all just kind of like, floating around doing a lot of conventions and commission work and things like that. And occasionally, I'll get something. I did a couple of things about a year ago for DC. I did a short story with Lobo story. And then after that I did it was 6 pages of DC Generations or something like that. They kind of just do this in the middle. I was like, okay, what's going on? And it was all kinds of crazy stories going on. So I was kind of trying to piece things together. It was really weird. But then I realized I was like, wow, I'm really out of the loop. I have no idea what's going on. But that's about it. So yeah, I'm available. But I'm also I'm at that point in my career. I'm sorry.
Would you be interested in a monthly book?
No. I was just about to get to that. I'm at that point in my career where I understand I have a finite time frame in my head for anything.
Right.
To me, monthly books are just for kids who just got to prove something. That's for them to get their career going. I would prefer miniseries. I'll even do a maxi series if there's enough lead time. But
what about one shots?
One shots, sure, but one shots are just, it's basically usually they're inventory stories, so it's
right
thrown in the middle of something that's already established. So
they're hard to get stores to pick up, but there's a lot of smaller publishers like Source Point Press and Scout Comics and some others that will put out a bunch of one shots. But yeah, stores aren't the biggest fans though.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for the single issue story.
Oh yeah.
There was it's funny because there was a time when I was going to be working with oh my god, I can't remember.
George Lucas.
No. But it's funny because he did a lot of animated stuff with Batman. But I can't believe I'm having a 55-year-old brain fart.
Not
I
Bruce
have
Tim
all
or
the time.
Yeah, but we were supposed to do detective for a time,
oh, nice,
and it was supposed to be one shots, just single issues.
right?
Maybe the occasional 2-issue story, but and I was like all for it. I was like, hell yeah. But by the time I wanted to get, the writer was getting married, so he wasn't available. So they gave me something else in the meantime. When he became available, I was busy doing something else, so we couldn't get back together. And even though we promoted this thing already, I was just like, oh, felt stupid, But it was just one of those things. It was just the timing just completely got screwed up, and just went off in another thing, another direction. So
Not just comics, but entertainment in general are filled with misfires like that.
yeah, that's why it's best to keep your mouth shut.
I'm still angry at Christian Bale for breaking his leg so he couldn't do The Deep Blue Goodbye. It was a John D. McDonald book.
Is that what happened?
Well, the
Yeah.
project, they signed him the contract. He couldn't do it. He broke his leg, so the movie just fell by the wayside. Now it's in limbo.
How did he break his leg?
I don't know, but I
Do we
understand
have
George.
proof that he broke his leg? Do we have a doctor's note? I think that's the old "I broke my leg" gag excuse.
He could have just been an asshole.
That
That
is
would have kept him
possible.
off that would have kept him off the project too.
That is possible.
Yeah.
Pissed off some
Yeah.
gaffer or something.
So what kind of you do like? Okay, forget it. I'm just gonna ask you what were your feelings on? I personally loved what you did with it, and I actually liked the outfit a lot, but I know a lot of people that didn't. The Superman New 52 outfit.
Remember I was telling how there's some books are instructional and some are
Yeah.
more visual. This was another case. Grant Morrison is an amazing writer and a maniac. He whenever I worked with Grant, every time I got an issue, I got that scene in A Beautiful Mind where he's in the shed,
Right. Yeah.
and the lights swinging, and he's got all this yarn going all over the place. To me, that's like what it's like working inside of Grant Morrison's brain. Very difficult because when you get a script, what's superfluous, what's there just for fluffing up the scene, so you kind of get the whole idea of what's happening. You kind of get to, and then okay, if you get like 50% of that scene is all the writer's really looking for. But with Grant, something's going to come back later,
Right.
and you don't know what it is. So everything you put down has to be exactly the way it's a lot of work, man. That was a crazy amount of work, and especially see what happened. Now I got a lot of shit, and what's his name from Bleeding Cool?
Rick Johnson or whatever.
Rich Johnson, right? He emailed me and he said, "I heard that you're off of action," and I was like, "No, why did you hear I'm off of action?" And he says, well, there's a rumor going around that you're off the book. I says, no, I'm not off the book. I got a late start in it, and because of it, I needed some help, and Gene Ha was coming in to do a prologue, and so that was all it was, and which was great because he did a better job of doing a Krypton than I would have done, And so, but I was like, no, I'm on the book. I'm just, I kind of ran into a thing. What happened was at that time, I was under exclusive contract with DC, to which they had to provide work.
Right.
And they were doing the New 52, but they weren't saying anything to any of us. Whenever a company likes to have these big things, the less people that know about it, the better. Right. So nothing leaks. And I think I was done doing a Sinestro. I did a couple of issues of Sinestro. No, it was after. Anyway,
Yeah.
I can't remember what the hell I was doing at the time, but I was available and I was looking for work.
Yeah.
I kept bugging my editor. Look, I'm available. If you have something, give it to me. What's going on? And we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you. We'll get back to you. And after a while, and normally, if at the time, if I was ever without work, it was no more than maybe a day or two, and then I get the call. Now we're getting to like a week, and I'm like, all right, now this is really stupid. All right, now I got, I'm gonna call my lawyer, like I had one, and so it was so I kept bugging them, and then they just started throwing a bunch of covers at me. One was actually done in like a triptych, but like in a pyramid shape, with one at the top and two covers at the bottom, and you put them all together. It's one big scene.
Yeah.
For Sinestro and the Green Lantern Corps. And it was Sinestro coming down from the skies like Jesus, like floating down above them. And the ones, and it was like all the Green Lantern Corps at the bottom. It was like a really cool cover. And I was like, wow, yeah. They basically gave me that to shut me up because I don't think I've ever seen that in print.
Wow.
And then I also did a Captain Marvel. The Shazam Captain Marvel cover was a bunch of teenagers in the front. You had the Shazam with the scar across his face. It was Flashpoint, I think it was. It was called. So I did a bunch of covers for them,
Yeah.
And that kind of, I says, okay, so that paid the bills, and nothing's happening. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go up to see my kids, So I went to visit my kids. And they were up in New Hampshire, and I was in Pennsylvania at the time. So I made this plan to go see them for about a week. I said, well, get back to me when you guys figure everything out.
Yeah.
Just before I left, I get a call from Matt Idelson saying that, and prior to this, I had dinner with Jeff Johns. And Jeff Johns and I love Captain Marvel. I just love Shazam Captain Marvel.
Yeah. I
just love the costume, I think it's a great concept too,
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, and he and I were like talking about what would we do if we were doing this book together, and he ended up doing it with fucking Gary Frank. But he and I going back and forth. So when I got this call, I was kind of hoping it was something along those lines. I was all excited for that. And so I got the call from Matt, and he says, okay, listen, we're going to do something called the Do 52. We're taking 52 titles, and we're going to start them all over again from issue 1. And we decided to partner you up with Grant Morrison, and going to do Action Comics. And I was just like, Captain Marvel, Action Comics. Why would you want to give me ideas? I'm Captain Marvel. It didn't dawn on me that it was the very first comic book ever done, and that I'd be the only the second artist in the world to have ever done an issue of Action Comics.
Of Action Comics, yeah.
Never mind that it was with Grant Morrison.
Yeah.
That didn't sink in because I was thinking in my head someplace else.
Yeah.
So when it finally done sink in, I was just like, holy shit, this is a big deal,
Yeah.
So I went on Facebook, and all I just kept saying was like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, and I just left it at that. Just fixed it, duplicated it, did all that. But they didn't know what they were going to do with the costume because Grant wanted to do him in a t-shirt and jeans. They had no idea what it was going to look like, so they asked me to do that concept. Now, there's this one particular cover that's been reprinted over and over and over again, where he's like half in shadow and gets his eyes lit up. And he's holding this boulder, and it's just the t-shirt and jeans, right? Because I was just focusing on the costume. I wasn't focusing on him as much as the costume. And that's what I did. I submitted that because to me, the costume, there were certain stereotypes. There's certain archetypes in comic books that if you repeat them, they're always going to work no matter what.
Right.
And no one could conceive of jeans and a t-shirt, but in my head, it was easy. It was Little Abner,
Right. Yeah.
And so I was just like, dude, I'll just make, I'll make Superman. It's like Little Abner, and as you can see in that particular drawing, he's an older version. I didn't know at the time that we were going to make him 23. I made him as we see him now, a man in his 30s, right?
Right.
So that's the way. So I didn't give him that youthful appearance that would come later. But so when I conceived of him, it was just like one part Max Fleischer cartoons, one part Elvis, young Elvis. I know you're gonna like that, Mike. One part young Elvis, and Little Abner. I put them all together, and that's how I came up with that particular look. And I love that. I mean, even the boots, to me, I looked at,
Yeah.
to me,
Oh, I love the boots.
he was so, and I hated when they made him knobby boots, the fucking,
Yeah. Yeah.
because those boots, in my mind, he's so poor, and he worked
Right.
on a farm
Yeah.
that he couldn't afford a new pair of boots, so he would have them handed down as an older pair.
Right.
And so they look like they were like from the Grapes of Wrath kind of era, 1940s.
Right.
Kind of
Yeah.
boots,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not the kind of boots that you would get today going to, the fucking job lot or something like that.
Right.
So subsequent artists later would give them the old, the goddamn Batman boots,
Yeah. Yeah.
with the grill on the bottom,
Do you remember the number of that issue?
Number
which issue?
one.
Was it Action Comics number 1?
Yeah,
Yeah.
New 52 from
The new 52.
issue 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was so whenever other artists did it, I was like, you just didn't get it. You don't understand what I was going,
Yeah.
what I was doing, because I was trying to visually tell a story about a character as a Norman Rockwell would, tell the
Right.
story without actually, again, with words.
Yeah.
So that's and then later we blew up the shoes because he was running so fast he was going to launch himself into space.
Right.
It was my idea to rip the shoes up. I told him the Grant loved the idea, so we went with that. And so that's how we retired them.
Yeah.
Launching them
I
off
thought, yeah, I think it's still, I mean, for me, honestly, it really, even though like I really like the Kingdom Come Out S and everything for Superman, it's probably one of my favorite like Superman outfits is that new 52 one. It's just, it's so perfect and iconic, and like you were saying, it just points to so many different things. It's like it works.
Superheroes didn't exist at the time.
Right.
So what would a guy who's going to work do but get on his old work clothes, right?
Yeah.
So he'd get his overalls, his jeans with the patchy knees, and a T-shirt that had an S which has had his family emblem on it,
Yeah.
And his baby blanket.
Yeah.
Kind of like Diaper Man from the Mighty Heroes, was it?
Yeah.
That cartoon with the little kid with the baby blanket wrapped around his neck and he'd swing around the baby bottle. I used to love that cartoon, Mighty Heroes.
Yeah, are there? So I'm assuming at this point in your career, like you were saying, there aren't any like major comic characters or whatever that you haven't done that you would want to do. You'd rather do something.
It took me
new or fresh or something.
I will have been in the industry now 33 years next month.
Yeah.
And in that time, I realized that as much as I enjoy comic books, I'm not good at them. I'm not good at superhero comics. Probably, which is why Identity Crisis was just right for me, because it was less about heroes, more about people.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so I was able to use a lot of body language and subtleties and emotions and things like that you don't normally get in a comic book.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, Peter Tomasi really promoted me, having worked with me on Hawkman. He saw the subtleties that I was doing with characterization and how I had them play off of each other given the scenario and whatever circumstance was above them. Like when Shayera came back, and she's like Hawkwoman,
right,
from the Tim Truman era of Hawk World. And she goes to kiss Carter Hall, and he goes, "You're not Carter. You're not Kadar," And there's like this whole jealousy thing going on between, Kendra, who's the new Hawk Girl, and the old Hawk Girl. So, in the body language and in the way that I did the emotion, to me, those things are important, And when I did a JSA, before I did Identity Crisis, I did a JSA crossover. With Don Kramer, and he was on JSA and I was on Hawkman, so we were doing like something called Black Rain. And there's one particular scene where they're all having a dinner, and Hawkman shows up in his early Hawkman garb with the full cowl over his face, full of blood, full of shards of glass, because he's lost his mind, and he was having an identity crisis, which is something they kept promoting throughout the universe. And so he shows up, and there's a scene of everybody reacting, and Kendra's in the front, and she's just like rubbing her eye, like, "Oh Jesus Christ, look at this," you know. And everyone is looking at Hawkman, okay, except for what was her name, Courtney, the Star Spangled Kid.
Right, yeah.
She's looking at her girlfriend because that's what girls do. They measure each other by how they react to it. You know, they're more. She's more concerned about her friends, you know,
right, yeah,
emotional content than what's happening in front. So that to me was telling the story of these two people. They're best friends, and they're reacting for each other and with each other over something that involves them.
Yeah.
You know? So those kinds of things that I like to do. You know, that to me is more about storytelling than anything else. And because, you know, heroes are just. When was the last time we actually had a Batman story that had anything to do with Bruce Wayne?
You know, I wouldn't know because I rarely dip into mainstream comics these days.
When was the last time we had a Spider-Man story that had to do with Peter Parker? All the time.
Yeah.
Because it's not a story about Spider-Man. It's a story about Peter Parker who becomes Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Batman has become such an overshadowing figure that Bruce Wayne was lost.
Yeah.
You know? And you can't have comic books without a good origin, alter ego, and supporting cast. They don't exist.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a fight scene. And I know comic books is all about riding around the fight scene, which is really, it's got to be infuriating.
Yeah.
But if you lose the actual genesis of the character and the people behind, which is what Identity Crisis was all about, right? It's about the people behind the mask, right?
Right.
That's why it works. That's why it's important, because it's about fucking people. It's not about who can punch who. Who gives a crap about that, you know? And it's probably why I'm really kind of burnt out on comic books, you know? If I did comic books now, it would be more interesting than what I want to do. It would be more involved with things like a social injustice or the politics of power and things of that. That's more important to me.
There's a whole world of comics out there that's not superheroes.
Oh, yeah. The independent market's thriving. You know, it's not selling great because it's being overshadowed still by the big money companies, but there's a lot more interesting stuff going on in independence.
They are thriving outside the mainstream crowdfunded comics. Like Graham Nolan just released a book called Alien Alamo, which is about, I haven't seen it yet, but it's about a farm-sitting community on another planet that gets invaded and they have to fight back. Right. And Graham raised over $180,000 for that book.
Wow. Good for him. All right, good. See, that's what I got to do.
Yeah.
Milk some people for $100,000.
Would you write anything?
Oh, I've got a bunch of ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing I want to do is because I don't know how to write. I don't know shit about writing. You know, I know about storytelling, but I don't know about writing. It's a very different discipline. And so, you know, what the first thing I want to do would be something more of a documentary form anyway. And it's kind of a passion project because you know, the story of Braveheart was actually a real story, but it had nothing to do with William Wallace. It had to do with Enrique. Enrique is a Taino son of a chieftain, and that's true history, and that's Boricua Indian history, which is the Taino Indian, which is the whole Caribbean. Essentially, it was the Dominican Republic is where it all happened. And the story of William Wallace, how he was a little boy and his father, who was a clansman, a chief of a clan, got together with a bunch of other to meet with a representative of King Edward, right? Mm-hmm. And they had them all killed as they got to that meeting, and then they took over the place and they raped his woman, and then he went off with 10 of his men like Robin Hood, like, you know, and he got his revenge. That's supposed to be based on an old folk song, an old Scottish folk song. But I've got the documentary. I checked it out, and there's barely any mention of William Wallace. He's a side character. That song is really about Robert the Bruce. And so one day I decided to do a little research about the Indians on my half, and on my mother's side, on my father's side, my mother's. And so I'm reading up about Enrique, and I'm reading the story, how he's the son of a cacique, and how Columbus had shown up and gotten together all the chieftains of the island, had them all killed, and that he had a wife and that she was raped, and then he went off into the hills and fought off the Spaniards for 10 years. I said, well, that's the fucking story of Braveheart. No, Braveheart's the story of Enrique. So I wanted to retell that story. I wanted to do a lot of research on that. I got a copy of Destruction of the Indies, which was done by Bartolomé de las Casas, who was a monk, who was one of the friars for Columbus. You know, they bring a religion, you know.
Right.
And I know he stole the idea, because he went on to do Apocalypto after that. So he was sniffing around the Caribbean, got that story, fleshed out William Wallace with it. And then at the end of Apocalypto, you had the ministry coming in with the cross, you know, coming in on boats. So of course, you know, and so Bartolomé de las Casas, who wrote Destruction of the Indies, and it's a very difficult read because it's done in like 15th century, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's the language is kind of like really kind of screwy. So you got to go in there with highlighters and make notes and everything. But
is it in print?
Yeah. It's actually very thin. You know, it's very thin. But he was taking notes, and he used to be a soldier in the Spanish army, and then he became a friar. And because of him, we know about the things that really went on, the selling of 9-year-olds into into sex slave markets, the cutting off of the hands of the people because they couldn't dig up enough gold, you know. They called it Puerto Rico not because it was full of riches, of a port of riches. No, they told that to Queen Elizabeth, you know, or Isabella, who used to keep her quiet because she was pissing and moaning about it, because it was the East India Trade Company was really what it's all about. They were looking for resources to exploit. All right, European mentality. So they ran across these people, and they enslaved them and basically annihilated them. And there are no pure Taino Indians anymore. We're all half-breed, part Mexicans too. You know, we're all part Spanish. You know, Spaniards. So it's so that's the story. That's my passion project. I would like to do. Then I have some other ideas too, but that would be more of a fiction, and that would be the nonfiction thing. Although I did have the idea maybe of having one character being a nonfiction character that kind of like breaks away from the group, and to do kind of like a Prince Valiant, you know, and talk about the actual outer rim of the Caribbean, because a lot of people don't realize that the Aztecs would raid the islands and the southwestern parts of the United States of Indians for their empire. And so we are all a product of rape, you know. And it's all the Arawak Indians come from the South America. So there's a lot of interesting history that I would like to tell more of, and that have this fictional character kind of do like a Prince Valiant, but a Native American Prince Valiant who's kind of like a lost character going from tribe to tribe, you know, because I like history and I like.
That sounds like a series.
Yeah. Oh, it does.
Just with so much.
There's a whole lot. There's a whole lot, you know. But you know, I look, you know, when you hit 50, you don't look forward anymore. You look behind and realize how much time you've wasted. So I better get on it if I get anything done.
Oh yeah.
I'm just waiting for my kid to get out of the house. He's 19. I got to pick him up at work soon. But I got to wait for him to get out of the house, and as soon as he can do that, then I can afford to be poor. To pursue these things.
Well, where are the best places, like online or whatever, for people to follow you? Where you actually like people to follow you?
Hey, you know, it's funny. I don't care where everybody follows me, you know, because
okay.
I used to have a Twitter, but I think I pissed off some people.
Yeah,
I'm no longer on Twitter. You know, it's I won't get into it, but there's only 2 places you can find me now. I have 2 Instagram. Well, the 3. Okay. The main place where I will do a majority of my communication will be on a Facebook page, because the audience is there. I've got like 5 million of people there.
Right.
And it's the Rags Morales art page. And in fact, that's the place to congregate when I make notifications about doing up a new commissions list.
Right.
But then I try to direct everybody to my main website, which is actually a Tumblr, but nobody's on Tumblr anymore, right?
Yeah.
But I send a link anyway. So I always tease there anything I'm doing, and then I promote it at my website. So that's ragsagainstthemachine.net. That's the Tumblr. And then there's rags and hashtags on Instagram, but that's just, again, it's a teaser to show you what's going on my website. So
Right.
at ragsagainstthemachine.net, you'll see my commissions that I'm doing. I'll do the occasional blog. I promote appearances. I've pinned at the top now my convention schedule so far this year. I'm going to Virginia twice. I'll be in Roanoke and Abingdon, Virginia, and then I'm going to be at Lexington, Kentucky, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. And June, July, and August have yet to be set, but I'm pretty sure I'll get a call from my agent to let me know what's happening those months too. But that's what we have so far.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. And you said you don't know about the I guess you guys aren't doing the Kickstarter or whatever with Jim Starlin
We're just
anymore.
waiting. Well, it's Jim's thing, so
Right.
I'm really not part of the the negotiation. Of course, a proper page rate is important.
Right.
Because long in the tooth. So
Yeah.
I carry an old school page rate, but we'll see what happens with that. And as long as they pick up my girl's coloring, then, because before they were going to have me pay, and I paid her to do the promotional pieces.
Wow.
But now that we're working with a real publisher, then I'm pretty sure they can afford their own colors too. So that's where we are now. So I'm just waiting to hear. I'll be able to announce it as soon as I can. I'll be certainly making sure everybody knows. I'll be promoting it. But for now, I think it's just best just to wait for it to cook before I could say it's done.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rags.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Go pick up your kid.
Yeah. He's gonna text me soon to let me know when they're done. I'll talk to you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.